Welcome back, everybody. It is Tuesday night, and you know what that means. We are getting defensive here on Gridiron Ratings. I am your host, Kraig for our First Take Tuesdays of the IDP show. And with me, as always, I have Gary and James. James, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday? How did the last week of the regular season or possibly some playoff games treat you?
Last week of the regular season treated me great. My 1-6 dumpster fire team ended up going 6-1 the rest of the way, and won on tiebreakers by like 4 points. Thank you, Kyler Murray. I know it's dirty O, but I don't really care. And then also my main contract dynasty team, first overall seed, bye weeks. So I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fantastic. I hope you guys are doing as well as I am.
Gary, how are you doing overall?
Well, you should know, considering
that's just one matchup, Gary.
Kraig just took me out of one of my own leagues, so
it's a Monday night miracle. So.
Yeah, I'm not collecting any money. I told him the night before. I said, "You're going to catch up. I can see it."
Hey, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah, but how he caught up was Aaron Donald just going off. And then he'd substitute Ramsey for the replacement, I guess, and he went off.
Yeah, Darius Williams. Plug in there, and he had a big game.
Yeah, I think he had like 4 players, but 2 of them were the ones that got it and killed me. Like 60, 70-point lead I had. It was wiped out. Something like that. Anyways, other than that, I did really well in my tipster leagues on Sleeper. I won in all those. I made all the playoffs. And then let's see, I had another one. We started the playoffs. Don't ask. Long story. But either way, I won in that one, and I'm moving on to semifinals here. And then I'm 12-1-1 in IDP incentive. I'm stoked about that. That's flagship there. I never expected that. I do think that me trading the 4th rookie overall pick and Gaskins for Harris, Najee Harris, or the number 1 overall pick is what I did, and I picked Harris. That really helped me make it through this. He's carried me in the right spots. So, but either way, I team was drafted by the computer. Believe it or not, I spent the offense was killer. I just had to patch up the IDP. So I feel blessed that I did so well in this one. I did. I literally missed this huge live draft. So I'm feeling good. It's been a good playoff run personally.
Yeah, and it's a free league, but Gary and I face each other in another one this week. One of those crazy, James, was it 12-16 teams start 4 linebackers each? So, one of those fun ones.
14 in those. Yeah, 4. Yep. Deep ball.
Yes, it is. But anyway, thank you for joining us here. If you're watching over on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you didn't. And please add any comments that you have. It can be questions, even offense. Preferably not, but we'll answer anything. Gary can take a break from.
Yep. No, I'll put up with it, I guess.
But waiver wire should start. Trades, if you have a trade deadline that is non-existent in your league, anything like that, we'll answer them. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, James, you're telling us it's time, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. It is time. So, if you're a degenerate like Kraig or Gary over here, or, you're just shockingly good like me and make the playoffs in all of your main leagues that you care so much about, you're finally here. You made the playoffs, and in all likelihood, you're there somewhere in at least one of your leagues, even if it's not your main one. So no more looking ahead towards buys, no more prepping for multi-weeks down the line. We've gone over the hump. We're now past that halfway point in our heads or that look forward to the next day. It's about getting what you can immediately. Now is the time where, if you need a LB and you're out of IR slots, somebody's got to get the axe. You have that horrendous matchup at your DL2. You got to cut somebody. You need to focus on winning. It's obvious. It's redundant. Everyone knows it. But this is the time of the year where you might make a cut that might shock someone in a dynasty league. Might make someone go, really? You let go of him? But if you cut Kenny Golladay and you go add someone who you need, does it really matter if you win in the playoffs? That's what this is all about. It's about winning. It's about getting far, and it's about having a good time. Make sure to do that in all your leagues. So if you got to spend the rest of your FAAB on something that you don't love, you still got to do it. So go get it done. Small edges are what give you the W. So enjoy that. Enjoy the playoffs. Enjoy fantasy football. Don't get too stressed out over this time of the year. Enjoy it whether you win or lose. Just have fun, because even if you're playing for money like most of us are, you're still trying to have fun. You're not doing this to make a career out of it, so enjoy yourself.
I want to ask you both, but James, I'll start with you. When you're in a situation like this year where, it seems like a quarter of the league is getting COVID now and we're unclear what's happening from game to game, are you more likely to take a chance at a hot hand of a lesser player than an underperforming stud that has just all this uncertainty around him, or are you going to just stick with what you know, even if it's been a bit underwhelming this year?
It's definitely about trying to find the most points in any given week. That's like the most obvious answer. But that means if you have an underperforming stud and you can go at someone whose matchup is juicy and you think that's giving you better odds to succeed, then you go and you make that move. And even if, say, you have to cut that underperforming stud in order to go get that juicy matchup, well, if it gets you to next week, it doesn't really matter that you lost next week or the following week or the week after, because you got the dub right now. So I'm all about looking at matchups, not overthinking it necessarily, but finding guys who are there. If you're in a league where people are mostly stagnant and they got here on these guys, they're going to ride them till they die, well, that's what they'll do, and you can go and find someone. You kind of have to always differentiate. If you're in a league where everyone's making tons of crazy moves, you should probably sit back and relax and go and snag guys who get cut too fast. So it's always, unique to your league. But by and large, especially this season, there are people out there on the waiver wire right now who could win you this week. And I don't know what your roster complexion is, but I'm sure there are plenty of playoff teams on the rosters who need to make moves.
Gary, I know we talked before the show a bit about how sometimes you overthink stuff and you try to go with a matchup over a player or something. Do you have any sort of general consensus on how you go about it, or is it just sort of based on the matchup that you have team-wise?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because it just so happens this past week I went with my normal going with matchups, and the matchups were on paper. The matchups were far enough apart. I went with some more lesser known players over a couple of studs that I probably, at this point in time, when you're in the playoffs, you kind of, you kind of got to also weigh in going with what got you there in your core studs. And I didn't play a couple of them, and I played a couple of lesser guys that had better matchups swinging for the fence. And those guys had actually, been consistent in doing this in the past for me, but they did not this time. So it cost me, I think I learned and relearned a lesson. I didn't do that, luckily in my other leagues, but I relearned a lesson. You do use what got you here, if at all possible. More than likely, if it's been working, it's going to continue to work. If it's been questionable, then don't do it again. I think that would probably be my best answer for that.
All righty. And before we get into some injury info, before we get into the juicy stuff for you guys here tonight, make sure you're checking out that COVID stuff, even right before game time on Monday night or something like that. As you saw, Tyler Higbee, I think they said was a false positive, kept him out of the game. Even Ramsey was kept out of the game. And then you got to sometimes, hopefully your league will let you pick up guys late. I know some leagues don't. You get that one shot at waivers before the games, but know your league, know who's available, and perhaps if you can plan in a backup plan for those later games, do so, or take them out of the equation unless it's an amazing matchup that we don't run into that situation of potentially not having a player starting for you in a playoff matchup and not having a backup. I think Chris Jones was one of the big names I saw that he went on the COVID list today, and certainly he would be in a lot of starting lineups for the playoffs. Other players here with some injuries this week: Eric Harris is out for the year with a pec injury. Calais Campbell and Roquan Smith are both day-to-day with soft tissue injuries. Gary, you may have heard something on this one. Alex Anzalone, he left with an ankle injury. I didn't see anything really updated in regards to the severity of that. Had you heard anything on him? I know you keep your ear on him.
Yeah, actually, I've been wondering what actually happened, because right before the contest started on Sunday, somebody reached out and asked me about Barnes's value. Is Barnes's value going to be higher? Is it going to be better because he's going to be wearing the dot and leading the way? And I was like, I actually wasn't around my laptop. I was with family or whatever. I was on my phone and I asked him what he was talking about, and he mentioned something about he's the man that week. And I was like, I told him, I said, I'm still avoiding Derek Barnes at this point because of what just happened last week, and I just kind of found it. So no, I actually don't know what's going on with Anzalone at this point, but I kind of took it. I can't clarify this, so I won't say it. I have no freaking idea, and I applaud anybody that got Josh Allen or Josh Woods in there. Speaking of Kraig, I guess you was desperate enough in one league that you had one of the leagues that I've got you in, right? So
yeah. So not that this is the.
So while you're looking that up, folks, I was actually on Twitter after seeing how Josh Woods went in and he led the way. And I think in most formats, he might be the top 1 or 2 performers for the weekend. But I got 2 replies of other people with snapshots of having Josh Woods. I think my quote on my tweet was, what lucky son of a bitch IDP dude, or it was a little. Who got lucky here? And I'm shocked that anybody went there, and then to find out Kraig did. But it was a little bit out of desperation, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work or not. We're trying something new here. You guys able to see that now? I think we're showing this on the.
Oh yes, we can.
So this is one of the leagues. Gary has a defensive invitational here, and you see, there's offense and all this, but then you get past that, and there's I think this is the league Gary said that had the double scoring issue.
Yeah.
There's double counting stuff, but you can see, Aaron Donald, 47.5 here. I had some nice defensive players, and then my linebackers I'd sort of been playing around with, and lo and behold, Josh Woods with 42.75 in this league.
Well, and that's actually our main writers league. Most everybody in there is either a writer or a personality in fantasy football land out here. So that was
there you go. 2 days ago, I was desperate trying to kick something around, figure out what was going on, so I picked him up. So
that paid off, man.
When you get in 14, 16 teams with starting 4 linebackers, sometimes you got to get desperate. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then you picked up Ramsey's replacement, or that kid there, and he had a really good game for you. So you was kind of hot on the waiver wire for the deep dives.
That's the way you got to do it sometimes.
Love it.
Jim said, if I want to beat you, I got to be digging around knowing what I'm doing. So
yeah, I was having a good season up to that point. Thank you.
Well, you're still having a good season overall.
So. Yeah. I'm all right.
Other guys here of note quickly, Darwin James, of course, didn't play. Surprise inactive with a hamstring. He's day-to-day. Quincy Williams with a shoulder. Leonard Williams with an elbow injury left the game. Aziz Al-Shair, who had a great game, but also left early with an elbow injury. And then Camo Grugier-Hill to the Texans. He had a knee injury and also put on the COVID list. So that, surprisingly, with that cut of Zach Cunningham, that's another complete mess of a linebacker room where you're sitting with, I think maybe Kirksey and Neville Hewitt is what you're looking at this point. So, again, with COVID, with injuries, make sure you know what you're doing when you're putting in those waivers tonight or tomorrow. And
hey, just a little bit of waiver talk real quick about Eric Harris. Jalen Hawkins actually played 100% of the snaps. Now, he didn't do anything exciting with those snaps. I guess Harris went down early in the contest this past weekend or something. But I'm pretty sure I seen Jalen Hawkins get to play 100%. He got minimal production. But it actually was not a great on-paper matchup to begin with, so for him to come in and not do anything, if you're desperate, we're talking about COVID and we're talking about missing a lot of players. There might be players stuck on losing rosters right now that you'd just love to get your hands on. But Hawkins might be a swing for the fence against the 49ers. You're going to have to be desperate, but the matchup is really strong. After that, though, versus the Lions, he's not going to be worth anything. So at that point, would probably just drop him.
Gary dropping a dime for you guys early in the show here tonight.
Yeah, it's a deep swing, folks.
Gary sort of gave his 2 cents. So, James, I'm going to go to you with the first sort of dive into a position group here with the Lions linebackers. Again, you had mentioned Alex Anzalone had left early. Jalen Reeves-Maben was out, which left Derek Barnes with a 69% snap share, 2 solos and 3 assists. And the aforementioned Woods, 94% snap share. He was calling the plays, and he had 10 solos, 3 assists, and 2 tackles for loss. Given that we've seen it a couple weeks in a row here, is he someone that you feel like you could trust if those 2 other linebackers are out inserting into your lineup at this point in the season?
I'll be honest. We're in the playoffs. You shouldn't have gotten here based on the back of some good players, whether they're injured or not or whatnot. You likely didn't get here by just skating by on junk. That said, if you need to put a linebacker in, I'm all about Joe Woods. I think last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was not at all about Joe Woods. I was very like, who is this guy? It's junk. Keep him off my roster. But that's how times change. I go from not wanting to start him outside of the playoffs to wanting to put in a waiver claim on him if he's available. He's a top ad for me right now. With Anzalone potentially out, which is, of course, the big if here, but if he actually ends up being out, oh my gosh, do I like Joe Woods. Do I think that he's the kind of guy who can piggyback you to a win, defensively speaking? He's got everything you want. He's going to have playing time. He's going to have volume. He's going to have production by default. He has absolutely no name value. So in all likelihood, anyone who's a casual player in your league might go ahead and miss him and see him as a one-hit wonder. There's a lot going on for Joe Woods, and he's what I want. The rest of his season schedule looks very good to my eyes. He's going up against the Cardinals, then he's at Atlanta, and then he's at Seattle. So even if you have to run him through the playoffs, if you're in that type of deeper league, I have no issues here. If you need to sink or swim and add somebody to your linebacking core, I'm all in on sinking or swimming with Joe Woods if that's what I have to do. Ideally, I don't, but in a situation where I do, he's my pick.
Gary, how's he looking for you for your leagues? I mean, have you seen him as someone that's available, or were the Sharps already picking him up in anticipation of him maybe doing something?
Oh, I'm thinking that, I kind of look at transactions, I kind of like to see what people do, drop and stuff for my own benefit. So I can tell you, I overlooked that you picked up Josh Woods in there to begin with, but you might be the only one that I can think of that possibly did, because I don't think that anybody was nuts enough to get him. And why would they pick him up if you ain't going to play him? So nobody had him in, right? So I was actually looking while he was talking, seeing if I could find out something. Here's what I'm wondering was the call, because Anzalone went down during the game, right?
Yeah, he left with.
But I'm wondering from what that guy was talking about, if it's possible that it was supposed to happen, that maybe they announced that Anzalone wasn't going to be wearing the dot, like he was demoted. So if he was demoted, then we definitely want Josh Woods in there next week, because he's if he was, Anzalone's hurt anyhow, you know what I mean? So they're probably going to play Josh Woods again. That's what I'm going to try to find out here while you guys, I guess, give me a second and move on to the next one or something.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, if you look at those snap counts, that Barnes sort of took over once Anzalone left, because, Woods had that 94%, Anzalone left at 22%. It kind of seems like Barnes came in and picked up the slack once he left.
Yeah, so I remember looking at it. I just don't know. Yeah, if Josh Woods is in, I mean, he's definitely an option. He's shown for a couple of weeks here that he can do something while he's out there on the field. So if you really needed it, play, as a LB3 deep league something. I certainly wouldn't go, Roquan Smith is questionable. I wouldn't go jumping at Josh Woods, but he's an option, definitely a good option.
Before we get into this next one, I did want to let you know, James, in that matchup Gary and I had last week, he did start Quincy Williams too. So he was on the Quincy Williams bandwagon in that one.
Yeah, I own him in a few.
I like how some of my thoughts are just seething into Gary. He's just going,
you
Quincy
got to do what you got to do, right? And he's overproduced up until this point. I don't think he overproduced quite to the percentage that he should against the matchup, but he didn't lose anything for me.
Moving on here, Grant Delpit, which Dynasty Leagues, he's probably not a guy that's going to be available on waivers at all. But in redraft leagues, certainly he is someone that probably would be. He had 11 solos on 100% snap share this past week with Ronnie Harrison out. Baltimore was a great matchup, but the Raiders, who they're playing this week, I believe are in the top 10 points allowed to safeties too. So, again, for most of these guys, we're going to be running into that situation where hopefully you're not going to have to go digging around trying to mine for gold at this point in the season. But if you're in one of those situations, that's why I keep the waivers open in leagues through the playoffs. Gary, do you have any interest in a guy like Grant Delpit if Ronnie Harrison's going to be out and he's getting that snap share?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I knew Ronnie Harrison had a great matchup when he played Baltimore. The 2 weeks before their bye or whatever, 2 weeks, he had monster numbers. So I was expecting close to that. So I already had Ronnie Harrison in a couple of lineups, and then I had the convenience. I was able to go get his replacement there, who was the logical replacement if he didn't play, and be able to plug him in. It was such a strong, it's a top 5 matchup against Ravens or something for the safeties. So I just, as soon as the news came in that he was out, I went and switched him. So I think that you could do that again. I think Harrison may still be questionable, I'm trying to remember what the matchup was like this coming week for him.
It's the Raiders, which I think from what I had saw were decent.
Right. Yep. I believe that's like a top 12 or something possibly. I don't have any problem playing him if he's, if he's in.
James, any thoughts on Grant Delpit?
Yeah, he's another guy who, if you find the right matchup and the right injuries in front of him, you are going to play him because you've got an injury, the Browns got an injury, and you need to sub somebody in. And it looks like it's a matchup that's pretty nice. I'm not head over heels for it, kind of like I am for Woods. I am willing to do it in spots where I have to do it. But, I'd love to find someone who's kind of less manic, someone who I feel is a little more of a higher floor, even maybe a higher ceiling with that. Maybe somebody on our list who we might be talking about here shortly. But I think Delpit is a fine play, especially if you are in a dynasty league and he's somehow out there. You can add him, run with him, and see what he does the rest of the season. But that's kind of grasping at straws. Most dynasty leagues, he's not going to be out there.
Yep. We're going to rotate back here to linebacker talk. And once again, it's sort of like we're on again, off again, on again. The same
love-hate
we've talked about this year. Yeah. A guy that both James and Gary have talked about quite a bit. Ernest Jones is back in our lives. For the past 2 weeks, he had a 97 to 87% snap share, and he's producing. He's got 10 solos, 6 assists, a half a sack, 2 pass deflections, and an interception in those 2 weeks. So rest of the season, it kind of feels like he is going to be taking over that top guy in the middle for the Rams. They have Seattle, Minnesota, and Baltimore, which, Gary, you had said you love those matchups for them.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. Okay, folks. So a few weeks ago, we had that one great game out of them. Everybody's all hyped up. And then he turned around and came in, and I believe he got hurt. Resumed playing. Troy Reader was the main guy for a couple of weeks there. So we all kind of lost interest in him. I even lost interest in him because I didn't think he was at that point in time. I needed to shuffle in for the other bye weeks and have other plays. I actually dropped him in a few leagues, except for my deeper ones. he didn't do anything during that time. Well, now all of a sudden, this is the second week in a row that he's wearing the green dot again, and he's the main guy. So Troy Readers went to that part-time position as the second inside linebacker. I'm not sure how Reader is doing, but either way, he's performing. Jones is getting the job done. And his next three, I love them. I love how it ends, too, against Baltimore. Baltimore has been giving, a lot up to the inside linebackers for the entire season. So that's going to be a really strong one. I can tell you I like these matchups the rest of the way through enough that in where I've got 3 to 4 linebackers in these leagues that we're talking about. If I got him on my roster, he's definitely going to be in the lineup. He'll probably maybe play over a couple other names. I'm having trust issues with Demarius Davis right now, and that actually was one that bit me in the butt this past week because the matchup wasn't supposed to be enough IDP meat on the bone for both him and Alexander, but yet both of them got it. So, I'm not really sure. I haven't gotten to check that game out yet. But I'm on the Jones bandwagon, folks, on the rest of the way out as a good, solid, deeper guy. Again, he's not somebody I'm going to put in over Roquan Smith, Devin White, something like that. That's your guys you got to have in. But when it comes to something with 3 or 4 linebackers, I'm definitely not shy about playing him.
James, I know you like him too, and the last time we talked about him, he was the guy that we all liked, but had fallen off a little bit. So, are you hopping back on with Gary?
Yeah, have I been riding or dying with Ernest Jones all season? Yeah, I pretty much have. He's been the rookie that I've hyped up when I've hyped up no rookies besides him. So, yeah, I'm all about him. But, week 1 of the playoffs? Yeah, I'm still riding with him. Absolutely, I am. That Seattle matchup's great. The rest of his season is great. Everything Gary said is exactly what he said, which is if I believe anything that I've said this whole season, I should be looking at Ernest Jones and salivating. And I believe everything I said. Everything is there for him to succeed. Sure, he's a rookie. Sure, he might have a rookie bump. Sure, he might not hit on a matchup that looks as great as it is. But at the same time, sure, he might go way above and beyond that. He's got variance. He's a rookie, et cetera, et cetera. So, like Gary said, in those leagues where I need to start 3 linebackers, heck, in a league where I'm a little desperate and I got to start 2, he's absolutely in play for me. He's absolutely someone who should be in a roster. And obviously, we're talking redraft here because in Dynasty leagues, he should be stashed the whole time. But yeah, Ernest Jones is someone who we all think can produce. Those Rams linebackers continually have produced. Ernest Jones is now there. He's produced over some weeks. Yeah, he got injured one week and he had to bye another week. But yeah, there's no real reason to doubt him at this point. Give me some big negative impact and yeah, I'll doubt, but it's the playoffs. You got to go with what you see, and I see a good performance.
Hey, folks, too, I don't mean to leave you hang dry. So I'm going to let you know I couldn't find anything about Anzalone. Not whatsoever. So, yeah, check us out Thursday because with Josh Woods being start topic, we'll probably bring it all back up again. Hey, we fingers crossed for Jones, right, James? I mean, this is it. This is kind of his momentum to finish out the year and us to save a little face, maybe.
I mean, honestly, I think he's done kind of what we projected. We weren't expecting him to step in week 1, but we were expecting him to step in pretty dang quickly. Yeah. And he's kind of done that. It took him, maybe 3 weeks longer than we expected. But once he went in and he's been on the field, he's produced, which is all we said he could do. And that's what he's done. So I don't.
It's definitely been a great confidence builder for him. A couple of interceptions and stuff this year. That's great confidence builder.
Exactly. He's not just racking up tackles and doing nothing else. No, he's out there making the bigger plays, which from just an overall team perspective and not necessarily fantasy football perspective is gonna help him build. And the Rams clearly like him, and they traded up to get him, and they want to run him, and they don't have any picks. So the future looks pretty dang bright here. And I chalk it up as a win. It's a very, very slight win. It's not a devastating win by any means, but I think he's doing more or less what we thought he would do.
Yeah, definitely. Folks, we're talking about him really probably longer than we should. But this is definitely for you folks that might be out of the playoffs, making some moves or thinking about the future. Think of this kid as a nice dynasty pickup next year, no matter what he does for the rest of this year. Especially if for some reason he gets hurt or something. Knock on wood, heaven forbid he does. But if that would happen or something, definitely grab this guy next year. Get him. What depends on your format, but I mean, get paid decent value for him. Don't be afraid to take him over. Some lower LB2 that is not going to do anything. You might hit something big on Jones next year.
And the fact that they trusted him that much in sort of a must-win game for them to stay within a shot of winning that division, they had to beat the Cardinals, and they left him out there, and he performed. So it's a big confidence boost for the coaching staff and him and himself, I have to imagine.
Yep.
So we go from a guy that we've talked about a lot to a guy that we have not mentioned, I don't think, on the show this year. Elijah Riley. He, the past 4 weeks, he's got 15 solos, 13 assists, a tackle for a loss, and a sack with an 88% snap share, seemingly just out of nowhere. He got on the field for the Jets 4 weeks ago, and he's been doing all right. Now, this is probably more of a deeper league play. He's not really doing enough to be thrown into, I think, consistent starter conversation. But if you're in a deeper league looking for a guy that's probably pretty much unowned at this point, he doing anything for you?
I mean, he's definitely doing something for me. He's basically playing and getting meaningful snaps on a team that is going to be seeing lots of passing volume and lots of production by default. Is Elijah Riley a guy who I think will have any value next year? No. But if I'm playing to win this year, I don't really care necessarily about that. If I'm injured and I'm desperate and I, lost Jamal Adams or whoever else it may be in my secondary, it doesn't matter that I don't know who Elijah Riley is. He's out there producing. He's getting plenty of combined tackles. He looks like someone who can continue to produce. He's going to have matchups where he should produce. I like him. He's someone who I kind of like more than Grant Delpit in a must-play 1 week scenario. He's not someone who I like as a football player, but fantasy football and football are not always directly correlated. There's a lot of correlation, but the guy's eating up tackles. He's on a horrific team. He's got an excellent floor as long as he's just on the field, which it appears very likely that he will be on the field for the whole time. So I don't need to think about long-term buying when I'm doing a spot start in the playoffs. I need to think about today, and I will buy Elijah Riley. I don't like him at all in the future, and once he shows me one bad game, then I'm out. But he hasn't shown me any. So why should I not bet for him in situations where I need to bet on someone? I like it better than Delpit. Delpit's only got one round of positive results. Who knows? It could have been matchup dependent. We don't know everything. Riley, we got a lot more information, and that information says he's going to get you volume. So I want to go with him.
Gary?
I wouldn't have any problems playing him for the next couple of weeks. I mean, I think James pretty well cleared it all up. I ain't got a problem against Miami or the Jags that are both fairly solid. A little potential there more with Miami for the same production he's been putting out. I mean, it's basically, production by default, whatever it is, he's in the right. He's in the right role, whether it's the Marcus May role, I'm not 100% sure, but his numbers are there, and he's been matching MSR, actually beating MSR. So his floor is his floor, definitely better than taking a hard, long swing at some of these other deeper guys. I would have to decide on the Delta thing, looking at the matchups overall, but both of them are actually good options. The only thing about the Jets guy is they play the Bucks in 17, and I wouldn't play him against the Bucks. That's a poor anything down the field. There's two things the Bucks don't do. They don't let Brady get sacked much, and they don't offer too many points down the field to the safeties or secondary at all. For the simple fact is, if they're throwing down there, they're scoring. or it's just a couple of passes and they're scoring. So there's not a lot of meat out there. So, but yeah. Up until that point, I definitely consider him an option, especially with the COVID situation. Deep leagues.
Yeah, deep leagues. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show here. Gonna start walking towards wrapping things up for you with our recommendations. So, James, do you have a waiver target or two for people to keep their eye on, or maybe put a bid in to see if they end up needing them for a COVID or injury replacement this week?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'll just hit the nail on the head one more time. I like Josh Woods. I think he is a guy to go and snag. Now to get onto the new names, except it's not really a new name. It's Zach Allen. We kind of just subtly mention him about every single podcast, and now he's going up against that matchup that we love. He's facing the Detroit Lions. He continually just kind of gets a sack and gets you your nice little tackles and has a beautiful floor, and suddenly he has a matchup here where he could just blow up in addition to having that very nice floor. And it's like if you plan ahead and you see these kind of matchups rolling and you see some production on your way to this kind of peak of the mountain, yeah, you probably should have gone and grabbed Zach Allen. And if you haven't, which in probably I think a decent amount of leagues he's still out there, I would go grab him. The Lions give up sacks. Allen gets sacks. I know we love our tackles here, but you could have a very nice big game out of Zach Allen. Likewise, if we're looking at matchups and we're looking at the secondary, give me Jordan Lewis going up against the Giants. Dallas, is pretty much going to be dominating the Giants in most scenarios. There's not a lot of variance that says that the Giants are going to be, in it to win it and having the lead and not really testing those cornerbacks. So he's going to do well. He's got 6+ combined tackles 2 of the past 3 weeks. He's playing Mike Glennon. There's a lot of math here that's adding up to me wanting to get him in my lineup where I need to, especially in cornerback leagues. So, yeah, I'll plug and play him. He may have already gotten snatched up last week, but depending on how deep your league is, he's probably still there. And these are the kind of factors that we look for when we're looking for plug and plays. And like I said earlier, if you need to get someone in, you don't need to look for the whole season. You can look for one matchup. And if it's Mike Glennon in a lot of passing situations, like with a guy who has a decently high floor, plug and play.
Gary, you got any names without giving any of your trade secrets away? Other guys that we haven't talked about that you're interested in this week?
Yeah, I'm going to first hold it hostage and say, hey, folks, appreciate everybody that watched last week and added those comments for us over the past weekend. And if you would leave us any comments now, we'll try to get back with you any waiver wire questions or anything you might have. So I just that interaction helps us a lot when it comes to YouTube. So I wanted to bring it up. Anyways, Chris Wormley, there's been a guy I've talked about off and on for the last few weeks, waiver wire wise. He didn't have a very good contest last week, but in the start and sit charts, I actually and our members knew that he didn't have a good matchup. So it wasn't a good time to play him. I actually set him in a lot of. I didn't drop him though because of this week. He's got a strong matchup against Tennessee, and whenever he's got a strong matchup or a good solid matchup, he's always performed. So you might want to check him out. Tennessee just allows a lot of points to any defensive lineman usually. I'll give another defensive lineman. We covered a lot of linebackers talking here recently, so it's a go with Charles Harris. He's actually been performing well. So if you're looking for somebody, he's got a strong matchup versus Arizona. A possible sack there. I'll give one more. Jordan Whitehead or Andrew, what's his name? Adam Andrews for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Jordan Whitehead is a free safety when he's been out for a couple of weeks. When he is out, Adam Andrews, I believe is his name, he's been taking his place. And if that's the case, I'd be worried at this point. I'd like to suggest full-heartedly Jordan Whitehead has a solid one against New Orleans in a divisional matchup. He's got another solid one against Carolina. He's got a strong one against the Jets. But if he comes back this week, I don't know if I'd play him because he's almost been out almost to the point of like a IR trip. He's missed like a couple of weeks. If Adams plays, I'd play Adams. I'd trust Adams. He's probably been serviceable for a couple of people the last couple of weeks.
All right. And on the flip side, sort of looking towards next year, redraft dynasty, either way, James, any names? I know we're trying to give 1 or 2 a week here to the viewers and listeners, but anyone you're keeping your eye on or writing down in your little handy-dandy notebook for people to look at next year in drafts?
At this point of the year, I kind of actually don't do that necessarily. I want to wait a week or two before I really dive in, because the names that might end up on my board are Josh Woods, and Ernest Jones, even though we've already hyped him up enough. But these guys who kind of show up today and we go, oh, I don't know anything about him, but he could, step up and become somebody. Same thing with Riley. If these guys put together, more solid weeks, I might say, hey, I can link up with this guy for another rest of the season. So generally, I wait until the last week or two of the entire season before I'm really looking to add those rookies who have no snaps and are just invisible, but might have a playing time next year due to free agency and whatnot. So in general, my ads are just the people I'm hyping up for this week to see how they do and see where they go. And if they've got enough promise, keep them around.
Fair enough. Gary, any guys you got in the back of your mind you're putting a tag on to pull back?
I think last week I said something about the Baltimore outside linebacker, I think we're going to have to start writing these down, man.
Yeah, so it was Odafe Owe. So
yeah, we're going to have to write these down. Did I mention, how about the Minnesota rookie safety that took Harrison Smith's spot for a couple of weeks?
I don't believe he was mentioned.
Okay. I can't remember that guy's name exactly. I'm just working at the moment off the top of my head. I just got in writing about the my inside linebackers and edge rushers in a waiver in a dime drop for Gridiron Ratings. So I was kind of opening that. I was going to cheat a little bit maybe, but I haven't done the safeties or defensive backs or defensive linemen. That'll be coming up, folks. Gridiron Ratings members, I'm trying. Let me see what I can pick out here. How about Peyton Turner? I kind of like Peyton Turner down there in New Orleans. If you're looking at deeper now, folks, you're not drafting this kid, or you're not grabbing this kid for a dynasty to do anything next year for sure. Don't make him a starter off the top, but I like him a lot. I think he might have an opportunity. Cameron Jordan, he's 33 years old. He's making a lot of money. They're going to have to make a choice and do something about Marcus Davenport. Are they going to pay this guy after all the up and down, all the injuries, and how much of their investment is? So there might be one less edge rusher down there. Who knows? It's a deep possibility. If not, just give it another couple years. I don't think Cameron Jordan is going to turn around. If you got one of those deep taxi squads or something, I don't think. I'm trying to figure somebody that we haven't talked about.
I believe Cameron Bynum was the guy that had slid in when Harrison had missed the weeks 9 and 10, it looks like.
Yeah, well, look at that. Josh Woods' name's in this article. This is deep, folks. This is really deep. We can't forget about Pete Warner down there in New Orleans. I think Alexander might be just on a 1 year contract. The thing is, I think he's only I know it feels like he's older, but I think he's only like 27 or 28 years old. But Davis is pretty old, 33, I think, at the same time. So it's a possibility. I think they also, don't quote me, just keep an eye on Warner, like I said. But I think they got an out on his contract, on Davis's. They could take before they pay him some big money. Not 100% sure, but we got to look at the state of the Saints. They've got some rebuilding to do. So, there might be some budgeting done real soon here if they're going to do some. They got some high pay. And they've been drafting a lot of defensive guys the last couple of years. They've had a nice little portion each year. So somebody to watch.
If I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but James, you said you were down on Demario Davis, sort of thinking he's more in a decline potentially.
Yeah, essentially all season he's been on my avoid list. I know he's been high on Gary's list, and to start the year he was very good and great, but by and large The Saints kind of scared me from a defensive standpoint. Really, they always do. And he's just old. He's just old, and I want to avoid old because his price tag wasn't exactly cheap.
He's too in love with Quincy Williams.
Exactly.
For good reason.
Right.
Give me a Quincy Williams guy all day who shows up. Next year there'll be another one. There'll be another one after that. And I just kind of don't want to pay for the old guy because when the old guy starts to struggle, as DeMario Davis has this year, you really kind of don't know what to do with him. You really want to dump him, but he's been so consistent for so long. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I don't like to do that with my roster spots just in general, just a general concept. I like to go, yes, I'm with you. No, I'm not, and not really feel anything in between. So a guy like Davis puts me in a tough spot, and I felt like he was more likely than probably a lot of other linebackers to hit that spot this year and be a guy who I don't really want to let go of because he's been so consistent for so long, but also end up in the spot where I need to let go of him. So I've been down on him most of the season. He's had some ups. He's had some nice weekly plays, but by and large, I just kind of wanted to avoid him. So I'm relatively happy in a sense that my prediction there of him getting old finally happened. I've probably been doing it for 3 or 4 years.
So he actually produced this weekend, right? He actually on my bench. I actually put Baron Browning in over him because of the matchup. And Baron Browning didn't do very well. So I don't think it cost me, but I wasn't really pleased with that whole thing. And I think they got the Bucks this week, and I don't think the Bucks are allowing a large amount to the inside linebackers. Now, it is a divisional contest, so that usually helps out. I'm more interested. I've got known Alexander. I've been using him consistently for bye week plays for people for the last few weeks, and having a lot, I'm satisfied. He's bringing in the LB3 numbers. He's actually hit a couple of nicer and higher ones, and he's actually had been outproducing Davis. So I've got maybe 2 rosters. I got both of them sitting on, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'll probably be playing Alexander over Davis this week versus the Bucks. That's it. Again, folks, if they got you here, you got to play them, but some of these deeper leagues, when we're talking about these players, these guys are really coming into play, and it's going to be interesting. I wonder how much COVID is going to take out along the way here.
And Gary's right. If they got you here, you got to play them. But remember that everyone on your roster didn't get you here. There are certain guys on your roster who got you here, and there were other guys who were along for the ride. So those guys who were along for the ride, you can get them go snip, and cut them off your roster and go and add one of these guys who's going to help you get a little bit further. So there's a yes and no. Obviously, you don't want to bench your absolute stud because he's questionable. On the Dirty O side, we had a lot of people going, what do I do with Dalvin Cook this week? And everyone who overthought that just got punched in the mouth because you don't bench Dalvin Cook. You just don't do it. And likewise, there's the IDP equivalent. But at the same time, there's lots of mediocre guys or guys who we thought would be a little better or a little worse than they are. And they're just kind of floating. And those guys you can bench. Don't forget that you can do it. You don't have to, but it's an option.
Those are good words to end the show here. Make sure you guys know your league, know your scoring, and know what you need on your team, and build in a little safety net if you're able to. Thank you for joining us on Tuesday night. You were able to find us at 9 Eastern. It'll be Gary, Tripp, and host JJ Wenner with the weekend primer Thursday nights here on Gridiron Ratings YouTube. You can find James's stuff and Gary's stuff over on gridironratings.com. Make sure you go subscribe and check out all the great content they have there for the Dirty O as well as the defensive side. Please let us know if you have any questions. You can find us all on Twitter where our handles below, and then also on YouTube if you want to put in a question or just a comment in general when you're hitting that like button. Please feel free to. We'll be checking out for those. But in the meantime, thank you, everyone. I hope this was useful for you. Have a great week, and hopefully you do well in the playoffs.
Good luck.
See you next week.